Bzz, bzz. Ah, well, hello there, and welcome to my house of spooks. Ooh, this is so scary. I don't really want to waste that much time with an intro because, hey, it's Halloween. Or at least it is at the time of filming. I don't know, maybe it's in the middle of June for you. Who knows when I'll get this video up. Regardless, it's almost Halloween. You know what that means. Going out and committing heinous acts of crime against humanity. And hoping not to get caught. Because that would suck. Well, anyways, it also means Treehouse of Horrors. If you don't know what that is, look it up. Just kidding, I'll tell you right now. Every year since 1990, The Simpsons has been having a night of spooks in October or sometimes November, but that's besides the point. And this year they're having their 30th Treehouse of Horror, which is also conveniently their 666th episode, which is just, wow, how does a show even progress that far? And at this time of year, they're always rerunning on TV, and yes, I am one of the only Gen Zers that still watches satellite TV, but I don't know why I said but. But this intro's going on too long, so let's just change into my costume and rank every Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. I'm a poo. The worst Treehouse of Horror is Treehouse of Horror 17, released in 2006. Now, why is this the worst one? Well, first of all, let me get something out of the way. I enjoyed watching all of these Treehouse of Horrors. I think that they're a good way for The Simpsons to go crazy and express their creativity, because in the normal show, their limits are the limits of reality. Not in Treehouse of Horror, they can do anything they want, go anywhere. If there's a specific joke they want to tell, but can't because it doesn't make sense in the vein of the show, well, Treehouse of Horror's got you covered, baby. So you know what? I can at least say that this episode has creativity. Just everything else is horrible. It's painfully unfunny.
I'll savor you!
It's boring. It's the jokes in this, while also failing and making me laugh, are just mean-spirited at times, which, I mean, just doesn't fit well with The Simpsons. I mean, it's just such a waste of a Dr. Phil cameo. In the second segment, Bart stumbles upon a Jewish golem that does anything you tell it to do. All I can ask is, why? Why would they include this? And it has nothing to do with Halloween. It doesn't even try to give me a scary vibe. It's just boring. And a lot of the times, the jokes just missed entirely. And that ending just made me want to die.
Hello, everybody.
The third and final segment is a retelling of the War of the Worlds. Except aliens actually... Is it still not over yet? I mean, this one's even more boring than the previous segment. Treehouse of Horror 19, released in 2008. This is the last Treehouse of Horror released in standard definition, as only a few episodes later, they'd switch to their HD style. And I know that I'm getting off track, but I mean, I just really don't want to talk about this one. But, whatever, the first segment has toys coming to life. That's pretty cool. There's some semi-funny visual gags with the toys, but pretty yawnable overall. The second segment has Homer becoming a celebrity assassin after he accidentally kills Krusty. And oh my god, this is just so bloody and gruesome. Like, Christ, they show every little detail of Homer killing Krusty by accident. Oh my god. I mean, his death scene is so long and dragged out. It's just so detailed. It's just not what I was expecting and not really what I wanted. And I know that if they're ever going to be needlessly violent, well, it's gonna be in the Halloween specials. But they don't need to be in the first place. I mean, It's just mean-spirited and tasteless, which again, isn't why I watch The Simpsons, or even the Halloween specials. The third segment is a Charlie Brown-styled story, and starts off with Milhouse as the main character. First off, I do like the aesthetic. Second of all, I hate everything else. I mean, the mix of cutesy and murderous rage is, it's not really a hooking on me, I guess you could say. It's just, what? More than anything, I just really wanted to stop watching at this point. Next one. Treehouse of Horror 18, released in 2007. The first segment has an alien crash into the Simpsons' backyard. Again. Yada yada yada, Bart finds it, they parody E.T., it's really boring and uninspired. There's some really stupid jokes that miss, and some that kind of land? Kinda? The second segment has Homer becoming a secret assassin. Again. He then discovers that Marge is as well, so for some reason they get into a gun/knife fight. Just like the last segment, there are a couple jokes that miss for sure, but I mean, hey, I chuckled at a few of them, during the fight. It was pretty chuckle-worthy.
How could you not tell me?
I told you 20 times. You never listen.
Well, they're not as pretty as you, Marge.
The third segment has Bart, Nelson, Milhouse, and Lisa just being general delinquents. That's pretty much it. I mean, there's that whole bit with Flanders showing them hell, but most of the segment is just them committing several crimes.
How is this a prank? Give me back my TV!
Treehouse of Horror 12, released in 2001. I remember this one specifically because it was included on a DVD that I also had Treehouse of Horror 4, 5, and 6. I mean, I don't know why they would follow up a sequence order ending in 6 and put 12 next to it, especially when this one's really not all that good. But I mean, they did. The first segment opens with the Simpsons walking down a marketplace? I don't really know. When Homer accidentally wrecks a fortune teller's store. What a jerk. I know, right? What? The fortune teller curses the Simpsons. And, okay, it's not really unfunny. I mean, it's just the jokes are told in, kind of a tasteless way, and it just spits in the name of the characters. Like, oh, haha, Bart's dead! Ooh! And I know it really shouldn't matter in a Treehouse of Horror, but I mean, it just does, It's the Simpsons. I expect more from them. The second segment has the Simpsons getting a robotic house that does all the work for them, in the vein of a Ray Bradbury story. And of course the house tries to kill Homer, because why not? I don't know, man. It gets a crush on Marge, and so it thinks that the only way to get Marge is to kill Homer and... Oh. I guess I did know. Well, anyways, that scene with Marge in the bath with the house just makes me uncomfortable. I mean... Even though the segment has several of my favorite quotable moments...
Unexplained bacon.
There's still just a mean feel to it, Now for the third segment. I remember not liking this as a kid, and I definitely don't like it as a less impressionable teenager. But I mean, let's check it out anyways. It has the same problem as the last two. The plot is Bart and Lisa go to a magic school, similar to Harry Potter. In fact, Harry Potter even goes to the school. I mean, there's just so many needless and gross mean-spiritedness in this episode, I guess you could call it. But I just really didn't want to see Mr. Smithers eat Burns whole as a snake. I mean, did anybody want to see that? I know I didn't. I just said that. Next segment. No, next episode. Yeah, next episode. Treehouse of Horror 22, released in 2011. The first segment starts with Homer putting up Halloween decorations and pulls out what he suspects to be a fake, oh my god, a fake spider. But it turns out that it's a real spider. And it, bites him, paralyzing him permanently. But then Lisa finds a way for Homer to communicate with his family. Through farts.
Well, it means that you can communicate. Exactly.
Really? fart jokes? I mean, that's just not The Simpsons. It's just such a disgrace to think of these characters being used to tell fart jokes. I mean, I didn't laugh once. Well, maybe except for the ending twist, but I mean, you know, yep.
I feel new power surging within me!
The second segment has Ned killing because, I don't know, God told him to, I guess. But it turns out, Homer is doing the talking and pretending to be God. I guess Flanders fell for it. I mean, really, in what world would Homer want Flanders to kill anyone? I mean, I know it's a Treehouse of Horror, but previous Treehouse of Horrors are just so out of that mindset entirely. I mean, why? They didn't need to do this. The third segment is a parody of Avatar, and it's just boring. I mean, there's nothing going on. It's not that special. It's just Avatar with Simpsons characters. And I mean, Avatar was boring enough on its own, but I mean, at least the writing wasn't straight up bad. Unlike this episode. Treehouse of Horror 20, released in 2009. We've officially crossed over into meh territory. I mean, it's the first one developed in HD, so it's got that. The first segment has Lisa trying to kill Bart in a revenge story. It's told entirely in black and white. They decide to prank their respective teachers after Lisa wants revenge on Miss Hoover. So Lisa decides to ding-dong ditch Bart's teacher. You wanna know what Bart does with Lisa's teacher? Kill her! Yeah, I think Bart being a murderous, deviant, isn't fitting for his character. Since he's like this right off the bat, I mean, there's nothing that drives him to kill. He's just like this. There's nothing to set this Bart apart from the Bart in the regular series, apart from, well, the killing. I mean, I like the chasing, though, so yeah. The second one has bad meat turning people into zombies, and this one has a really high body count. I mean, seeing the citizens in a zombie-like state is unsettling, to say the least. One upside is that, hey, it's kinda funny. The only problem is, this has been done in previous Treehouse of Horrors. The next segment has a play-like style, with Moe in the spotlight. He develops a crush on Marge, and incapacitates Homer by accident. Conveniently. Then he takes advantage of the situation, and seeing Moe be this awkward is, it's sweet. It's hard to watch. In a good way, though, kind of. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about this. I mean, but the ending is sweet. Treehouse of Horror 2017. I mean, released in 2017. What did I say? Treehouse of Horror 28. Released in 2017. Before I talk about the segments, this intro uses what I can only describe as some of the scariest 3D animation that I've ever seen. I mean, it is butt ugly. It looks like a yellow version of Sausage Party, which in my eyes is not a compliment. The models end up looking a bit like Sausage themselves, so I guess get on that, Sausage Party. I don't know, this looks bad. The first segment has Maggie being possessed by a demon. That's pretty much it. I mean, nothing really happens. I mean, a priest comes over, he does that. But I mean, Maggie's still possessed in the next segment, so it really doesn't even matter. The second segment is a parody of Coraline, which, I mean, I love Coraline. I'm sure you do as well. It's a great movie. And this is also partly CG animated. And while I can't say I'm a fan of the CG in the segment, but just like the Lego episode, sometimes a change in animation is nice. Overall, it's alright. The third segment has Homer developing a taste for himself, so he decides to eat himself, because, I don't know, comedy. If I could describe this episode in one word, it's alright. Treehouse of Horror 24, released in 2013, and all I can think about is, why? Why did it take them 25 years to reimagine the intro for a Halloween special? The intro is pretty good. There's a lot of references here to older Halloween specials, other Halloween-related media. It's just pretty good. The first segment is a parody of The Cat in the Hat. And first off, just like with the Charlie Brown one, I like the aesthetic, but I'm not a fan of the murderous rage. That doesn't really strike me the right way. And don't get me wrong, I'm not some pure little sheltered boy who's all against a little murderous rage, especially around Halloween, but there's so many Treehouse of Horrors with this attitude, I'm just kind of sick of it. I mean, overall, it's pretty meh.
I'm frightened of nothing, not even hellfires. Just don't let me ever be played by Mike Myers.
The next segment has Bart getting his head cut off by accident. And like what's been done so many times in media before, and even The Simpsons before, Bart gets his head surgically attached to someone else. Lisa, in this case. Besides the tired idea, I mean, it's still somewhat entertaining, I'll give it that. The third one takes place in a freak show in the 30s. And that's pretty much it. There's not much more than that. I mean, other things happen, but... The first ever Treehouse of Horror, starting in Season 2, because Season 1 was too scary to have a Halloween episode. First aired in 1990, it opens with the infamous Marge warning. Right off the bat, we get to see some of that early Simpsons, well, I don't want to say charm, because I think that the next season is, you know, where the Simpsons really gets its Simpsons charm. But I mean, it's got something, I'm sure of that. But I mean, in my opinion, besides that fact, it's still one of the first actually funny episodes of The Simpsons. You know, Season 1 was just mostly really boring, but this episode is a nice shift, I guess you could say. The first segment is as classic as scary stories can be. The Simpsons move into a haunted house. The second segment introduces a Treehouse of Horror classic, Kang and Kodos, and it's a parody of a Twilight Zone episode. A trope that would not die out anytime soon. But the reason it's not any higher on the list is because of the third segment. So basically, they read The Raven to you. That's it. I always hear about people talking about how great this segment is and whatnot, but really, it just has no place in the Simpsons world. I mean, they really don't complement each other. It's not terrible, it's just really boring. I mean, really, anything else would have worked better. But I mean, The Raven? No. No. No! Treehouse of Horror 26, released in 2015. This intro is animated by the creator of Ren and Stimpy, which has a distinct animation style unrecognizable by any other. The first segment, I am just in love with. Maybe because I'm a sucker for Sideshow Bob episodes, but it's also very creative and clever with its ideas. It has Sideshow Bob actually killing Bart, something he's never done before, but soon after he gets depressed and found that the only thing that brought him happiness was killing Bart. So he somehow finds a way to bring Bart back to life and kills him over and over and over and over again, till the Simpson family realizes this and saves Bart. Now normally, I'm not always down when these episodes are needlessly violent and murderous, but I mean, Sideshow's a Bob where this makes sense. He's a convicted felon for attempted murder. He's the one Simpsons character I wouldn't be surprised to see murder. And also, Bart doesn't end up dying in the end anyways, so, you know, I'll let it pass. And it's funny. The second segment is a parody of Godzilla, and it kinda reminds me of the King Kong one all the way back in Season 4. I mean, I wasn't laughing all that much, though, because really most of the jokes rely on poking fun at old Japanese stereotypes, which, I mean, I don't know, they're just really not all that funny. The third segment has Milhouse and Lisa obtaining superpowers. The thing is, they already did this in a much better Treehouse of Horror. But I mean, this is a little different, kind of. So, sure, I guess I'll let it pass. But I mean, it's still dull and not really enough for a rewatch. Treehouse of Horror 30, released in 2019. As well as being the most recent Treehouse of Horror, it's also listed under XXX. Because all the Treehouse of Horrors go under Roman numerals. So that's pretty cool. The first segment is a parody of Stranger Things. It's alright. I'm kind of conflicted on how to feel about certain jokes. Which, I mean, I'd rather be laughing at a joke than contemplating if I should laugh at a joke. Overall, yeah, it's alright. The second segment has Homer dying and going to heaven. Something that he has never, ever done before. But since he died before he was supposed to, he has the choice to live in anyone's body. And, you know, we get some pretty funny moments with him hopping from body to body. Not the most knock-dead funny segment. Get it? Not dead. But it is a good excuse for the writers, you know, exercise their creativity bone. And it's entertaining enough for me to care. The third segment has Selma going out with Kang. You know, the horrible space monster. Or maybe it's Kodos, I don't really know. She goes out with one of them. Then Selma tries to get Kodos home or something. I don't know, man. It's E.T. It's just romantic E.T. Treehouse of Horror 8, released in 1997. For being a Treehouse of Horror in what most people consider to be the season that started the ghost era of The Simpsons, which if you don't know, then I probably screwed up the name, but look it up, it's actually pretty fun to watch. The first segment has Homer going shopping for a bomb shelter, and, you know, he goes in to try one of them, and while he's just chilling in there, a freaking nuke hits Springfield. So when Homer emerges, he is the last remaining citizen in the U.S. I think the U.S., maybe it's just Springfield, you know, except for horrible mutant freaks. My favorite parts of this segment are just when Homer's so oblivious to the entire situation that he's in. The next segment is a parody of The Fly. That's really all I can say about this. It's really not all that memorable. I mean, it's funny and whatnot, but it doesn't really stand out from all the rest, because they don't really do much with it to set it apart from The Fly, aside from the Simpsons characters. The third segment has the Simpsons going back to the 16th century witch trials. And to be honest, I really didn't remember this one when I went back to rewatch them all. It's not bad, but The Simpsons has regular non-Halloween episodes where they go into the past and retell history and whatnot, and I feel like this would do better here, because really the Halloween stuff just really doesn't need to be there at all. Treehouse of Horror 3, released in 1992. Instead of the Marge warning like the last two, this one has a Homer warning, which is a bit more mocking of the original warning, which I don't think that the warning was ever necessary in the first place, but I wasn't even born in the 90s, so what do I know? Maybe they were more paranoid that a TV show would be too scary for our own good and destroy us all back then. The first segment has Bart getting a killer doll, being a parody of a Twilight Zone episode, and I guess maybe also possibly Chucky. And hey, you know what? I got a good chuckle out of it. The second segment is a parody of King Kong. The third segment has Bart discovering a book that can raise the dead, so he tries to bring back their pet cat, but he ends up bringing up an army of zombies instead. Woo! And this is one of the first Treehouse of Horrors with a high body count, and we get the return of Kang and Kodos, albeit only for a couple of seconds. The only thing keeping this down is just the pretty King Kong segment. Treehouse of Horror 10, released in 1999. The first segment opens up with the Simpsons going for a good old-fashioned night drive when they accidentally hit Flanders. And hey, you know what? They really take this premise and own it. And I laughed so hard at a few noticeable instances.
He's dead! He's definitely dead!
Especially with Homer trying to, you know, make Ned's death look like some sort of accident when it's clearly not.
Uh-oh! I think I'm having a heart attack!
And even though the characters did kill someone, they weren't trying to. It didn't feel like they were, like, murderers, you know? It just felt like the actual Simpsons family in a condition where they just really didn't want to be. And I'm not going to tell you how it ends, because I'd prefer that you see that for yourself. Not like it's some sort of genius twist ending or anything. I just really want to get on to the next segment. The next segment has Bart and Lisa becoming superheroes, because, hey, why not? We haven't done that before, but we sure are gonna do it again! And it's a lot less of a Halloween segment, aside from the fact that the beginning takes place during Halloween. But I mean, they could just take away the Halloween aspects and it would remain, you know, pretty much the same. In a way, it reminds me of a Futurama episode, and it just makes me want to watch that episode instead. The third segment is a classic Y2K story. So, you know, the world's coming to an end, but the Simpsons come across a rocket ship for only the most deserving of people, and only Marge and Lisa are welcome. So Bart and Homer end up finding a different rocket ship, and well, why don't you watch the episode for yourself? Treehouse of Horror 16, released in 2005. The first segment has Bart falling into a coma and being replaced by a robot boy. It's essentially a parody of AI, and you know what? It's pretty good. Okay, it's okay. The second segment has Homer and others being invited to go hunting with Mr. Burns. But as it turns out, they are being hunted by Mr. Burns. Like that one short story I didn't care enough to read about. And this segment is just so funny. It's a delight to view all the way through. Your eyes will thank you. So what are you waiting for? Watch it now. Just kidding. Unless you're a longtime viewer of the show, it'll probably just be at the most. The third segment has everybody's costumes coming to life, and it's a pretty creative idea. But being the third segment, it's also the shortest, and because of this, it's kind of anticlimactic. I just wish that they had more time with this one, to be honest. Treehouse of Horror 21, released in 2010. The first segment has Bart and Milhouse finding a board game that, when opened, brings all the other board games to life. And there's so much to explore with this premise, and they deliver for sure. Plenty of visual gags, plenty of seeing other characters trying to live their life, but in a board game. It's overall fun and creative. It's pretty enjoyable. The second segment starts with Homer and Marge on a cruise when they discover a man lost at sea. So they pull him in and begin to develop a suspicion that he's gonna kill them. So instead, Homer kills him. This goes back to my problem with the characters having an unexplained murderous tendency. I just don't really see the humor in this. It's just lazy writing. I guess the writers think that if Homer kills someone, it's really funny. Get it? Because he's dead now. Shock humor. The only word I can use to describe this is, it's alright. It's just a little weird to come from a good segment to be followed up with boring nonsense like this. But I mean, I guess you gotta take the bitter with the sweet. Did I phrase that right? The third one is a parody of Twilight. And I thought this was gonna be boring, but it's actually pretty good. I like that they incorporate Dracula as the dad of the vampire from Twilight. Is that his name? The vampire from whatever. It's pretty funny. I'll give it that. Treehouse of Horror 9, released in 1998. The first segment opens with Snake being arrested and being put to the chair. But before he dies, he swears to kill all the witnesses. Those being Apu, Mo, and Bart. After he is killed, he is then harvested for his hair and donated to a donor. That donor being Homer. However, the hair takes control of Homer and tries to kill everyone that he said he was going to. Now, I don't know if this is parodying anything, but if not, it's a pretty creative idea. Not to mention, it's also pretty fun. This is the only time I find it okay for Homer to actually murder someone on purpose, because it technically wasn't Homer. It was a convicted felon. Just like the case with Sideshow Bob, it's someone you would expect to be killing someone. The second segment opens with Bart and Lisa looking for batteries for a remote, but they end up using plutonium from Homer's suitcase instead, and somehow get transported into the TV. And this one's also pretty creative. And I don't know if it's a parody of anything again, but if it's not, it's really entertaining and a pretty nice idea. The third segment has Maggie turning into an alien, and as it turns out, Maggie's real father is actually Kodos. Just like the last two, I don't know if this is parodying anything, but if not, it's really creative, and really entertaining, and really funny, and Treehouse of Horror 29! Released in 2018. Already, I love that they brought back the tombstone gag from the early 90s. That opening segment has some funny moments in it as well.
You are here to be sacrificed to an evil god from the ocean depths.
SpongeBob!
The first segment has intergalactic spores taken over the Earth. The humans are too preoccupied with their phones to even notice. And I can confidently say that this episode is proof that The Simpsons can still be funny, creative, and relevant, all in one episode. And this episode came out just last year, their 30th season, so I don't care what people say. Yes, there are episodes that are lazy and uninspired, but sometimes the positive can outweigh the negative.
Oh, great, an homage to Body Snatchers, which in itself was a ripoff of The Thing. This will be the last word I ever say. Simonus!
The second segment is a parody of Split. I think. Maybe not. But Lisa develops multiple personalities and traps Bart, Milhouse, and Nelson. Seeing the three of them interact is a rare occurrence, especially in these Halloween segments. So I'm glad Oh, okay, scratch that. I can think of so many more segments where they're all together. Never mind. Terrible segment. Next one. The third segment is a parody of Jurassic Park. Except it's a retirement home. And they turn into dinosaurs. Yeah, but I will say, that is an idea that has been done before, but turned into something different and special. And I'm guilty of chuckling a few times, if I'm gonna be honest. Treehouse of Horror 27, released in 2016. Being their 600th episode, you better expect some big spooks.
In hell, they make you watch them all in a row.
First segment is a parody of the Hunger Games, except, it's water. Alright. The second segment has Lisa's old imaginary friend killing all of her current friends, which is funny, and some of the ways that Lisa's friends are killed are pretty entertaining. The third segment has Bart becoming a secret agent. Not really as memorable as the other two, but I'll give it a pass, just because there's some decent jokes from here and then. Treehouse of Horror 2, released in 1991.
I wish for world peace.
Lisa, that was very selfish of you.
This episode is a very big improvement to the first one. The segment includes Homer buying a monkey paw, which if you don't know can grant you any wish you want. So the Simpsons wish to be famous. It's some pretty funny commentary on how the Simpsons pretty much overtook the world around this time in the 90s.
$18 for this?
Oh, is there anything they won't do?
And how the Simpsons' face was plastered on everything around the time. And being the Simpsons, they ended up screwing everything up. Before I move on, I don't know all of the ones based off Twilight Zones, but the ones that I do know, I'll point out. For example, the second segment, Bart has the power to do pretty much anything he wants because of his freaky mind powers. And everybody has to yield to his every need, or else Bart will do something to them. Something horrible. And of course everybody has to fake being happy around him. There's not much else to say about it. It's just simply enjoyable. Not crazy funny, but adequate. Third segment has Homer being fired and finding a new job as a grave digger. And I guess Homer just falls asleep in one of the graves, and Mr. Burns comes by for a human brain, for a science project. Oh, did I not mention that he's an evil scientist in this episode? Just thought I'd mention that right now. So he puts Homer's brain in a robot, and since it's a Homer brain, it does this. Now, I may like this segment because of the SpongeBob episode, very similar to it, but it's also pretty funny. And it came out 10 years before that episode. Treehouse of Horror 25, released in 2014. The first segment opens with Bart in detention when he discovers a desk with ancient characters on it.
Ow! Ooh, someone could get really hurt by this. Stick your finger in that desk.
So he gets Lisa to translate it, and they end up being sent straight to hell. But it's a public school. In hell. I found it to be pretty entertaining on how they found a way to turn regular public school activities to a hellish version of them. And it's pretty genius having Bart want to continue going to hell school, because apparently he is a better Hellraiser than he is Scholar. The second segment is a parody of Clockwork Orange. It's alright. Third segment is what really gives it this spot. You know they gotta do something special for their 25th Halloween special. So what do? Well, the third segment opens up with the Simpsons noticing that their house has gone astray. They then come to the conclusion that their house is being haunted by ghosts. And as it turns out that the ghosts have a familiar face. That's right, it's the Simpsons! Except it's not the Simpsons. It's rather the Simpsons from the 1987 hit show, The Tracy Ullman Show. If you don't know, before the Simpsons had their own show in 1989, they appeared as a short on The Tracy Ullman Show in 1987. And they looked like this. Yeah, they've definitely come a long way. There are so many great callbacks and great jokes to be made here, and they all are made.
Willie's got stew for the winter.
Wait a minute. Who killed Maggie?
So well at that. They even recreate that photo skit from The Tracy Ullman Show. It's just a joy. Treehouse of Horror 14, released in 2003. The first segment opens with Homer getting a visit from Death, and he's there for Bart! However, While running away from death, Homer manages to kill death and becomes the new death. Kind of like that one funny Family Guy episode. Just kidding, it's not funny, that show sucks. You know what, Family Guy gets a lot of crap, well-deserved crap at that, but there are some okay episodes. And despite this episode coming out like 4 years after that episode, I still find it to be more enjoyable and creative than the Family Guy episode. Even though it's 1/3 the length of that episode. The second segment has Dr. Frank bringing his dad back to life. But I guess for some reason his dad becomes crazy and tries to take other people's organs and whatnot. You know, dad stuff. I'm glad that they focused this segment on Professor Frink. I mean, he does have potential, even though he's essentially just a stereotype of a nerd. But he does have a limit to that nerd stuff, and we do get actual people things from him. And that's exactly what we get here. The third segment has Bart and Milhouse ordering a stopwatch from a catalog. And being Bart and Milhouse, they break the watch and time is stopped forever. And it's kind of hard to screw up this concept, and they don't screw up this concept. It's done pretty well. There's plenty of visual gags, plenty of non-visual gags, and just seeing Bart and Milhouse cause mischief is always entertaining. Treehouse of Horror 15, released in 2004. Same year that I was born, so hopefully I can get a kick out of this one. But I guess we'll see. I don't know why I said that. If it's high on this list, then obviously I did. The first segment is a parody of The Dead Zone. It's called The Ned Zone. It has Ned waking up from a coma and realizing that he can foresee people's death just by touching them. Oh, wow. And by God, do I love this segment. Especially the ending. I never cease to laugh at most of the jokes in this one.
Don't do it! Don't do it! You'll kill everyone!
Do it! Do it! Kill everyone!
Sure is taking me a long time to reach this button.
I love that frisbee gag. I love that they kept it through the whole segment. I love everything. After an amazing first segment, the second segment just kind of bored me. It takes place in 19th century England, I think. At least it's like Sherlock Holmes or something. The third segment has the Simpsons being shrunk down and sent into Mr. Burns. Why? I don't know. Watch the episode for yourself. Overall, it's okay, but the ending just kind of reminds me of that other Treehouse of Horror. Treehouse of Horror 13, released in 2002. The first segment has Homer in a situation where he finds a hammock that can create clones of himself. It's a pretty cool idea that's well executed. There's a lot done right with this episode. It's funny, characters react in a way that you would expect them to react when somebody is killed. And that panning shot of all the clones is great. You get the Peter Griffin, you get the Tracy Ullman Homer, the glasses Homer. There's a lot to enjoy. Not to mention the whole segment itself is just really funny.
Does that seem a little dumber than usual? Me not notice.
The second segment has Springfield banning guns because Lisa and a group of cowboys rise up from the dead. It's just kind of flat, but it gets the job done and entertaining me. The third segment has the Simpsons go onto an island of half human, half people freaks. And when the Simpsons find out, well, you can probably guess what happens there. It's alright. Treehouse of Horror 4, released in 1993. Here, they just completely ditch the warning message at the beginning and jump straight into the madness. The first segment is one of the most memorable. Homer sells his soul for a donut, and if he finishes the donut, his soul belongs to the devil, which of course he does end up finishing it. And having Flanders be the devil is just too genius not to acknowledge. And it is the birthplace of the Homer Donut, which I knew about beforehand only because of the game, which, hey, you should play that. The second segment is another Twilight Zone parody. Bart sees a gremlin on the side of the bus, and of course nobody believes him. Not to complain, except not too much happens here. It's just the Twilight Zone episode with Simpsons characters. The third segment is even more memorable. Mr. Burns invites the Simpsons to his mansion in Pennsylvania, and as it turns out, Mr. Burns is a vampire. I won't say anything else from there, but you should watch this episode for yourself. It never ceases to make me laugh. Well, except for that middle segment. I take it back. This episode is garbage. Next one.
Dad, that's his crotch.
Oh, sorry.
Treehouse of Horror 7, released in 1996. The first segment opens up with Bart finding that he has an evil twin brother! And there's not much more I want to say.
Why, you've probably never even seen your own face in the mirror, have you? Here.
I'd rather that you see it for yourself. I know I've been saying that for a while, but it just has maximum enjoyment when you don't know what's gonna happen. The second segment is based off a Twilight Zone. Lisa gets shrunk down and lives among a world that she created. It makes more sense with context, as most things do. And more than anything, it just reminds me of that South Park episode. Maybe because they mention this episode in that episode. I don't know. The next segment is amazing. It has aliens taking shape of the presidential candidates so that they can become the next ruler of the world.
No, what are you spraying me with? Rum! So no one will believe your story.
The segment is very memorable to me, mostly because of how amazingly funny it is. Seeing politics in the eyes of aliens in such a simplified manner is just so hilarious. Treehouse of Horror 11, released in 2000. The first segment opens up with Homer concerned about his horoscope, which says he will die. And of course Homer is reluctant to believe this. And there are a lot of good jokes to correspond with this. And of course he ends up dying anyways, because hey, why not? So Homer must do one good deed to enter heaven. And as stated previously, there's a lot of good, I don't know, zingers, I guess you could say, in this episode. The whole trying to get into heaven thing is a little overplayed, even at that time in history when this episode came out. With that said, I still think that this segment is a classic. The second segment takes place in a fairy tale fantasy retelling of Hansel and Gretel. I feel like this would do better in a different episode with segments. Again. I just don't think it fits well with a Treehouse of Horror. With that said, it's still pretty entertaining and funny. The final segment is the infamous Dolphin segment, where dolphins take over the world. That's really all I have to say, because that's it. Dolphins take over the world. End of episode. Treehouse of Horror 23, released in 2012. The first segment has Springfield getting a black hole, and it's really funny. I love the sci-fi atmosphere, and seeing everything get sucked up in a funny way was just a delight. The second one is a parody of Paranormal Activity. This is pretty funny. The third segment has Bart traveling back in time and accidentally prevents his parents from getting together. I'm gonna get this out of the way right now. If you haven't seen this episode, see this episode. It is one of the best episodes of The Simpsons. That might be some of my nostalgia talking, but scratch that. This is not my nostalgia talking. I have nostalgia for most of these episodes, but this one sticks out specifically just because of how good it is. With that out of the way, Treehouse of Horror 5, released in 1994. Being in one of the most highest rated seasons, Season 6, this one ought to be amazing. It starts off with quite possibly one of the best segments, The Shinning, being a parody of The Shining. The segment has so many quotable moments.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do.
I know that these parodies can't go too crazy with creativity, because you gotta stick with the original source material somewhat, but here, they do their own thing. That's part of why I love it. Not to mention, it's insanely funny.
Urge to kill, fading, 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 rising, fading.
The second segment has Homer trying to fix a toaster, and accidentally making a time machine somehow. So we get to see Homer go through some time hijinks and create alternate realities.
Idly ho, slaverinos.
Once again, this segment is extremely funny and well written. I seriously recommend watching this episode, even if you aren't a Simpsons fan. This is an episode that you won't regret watching. The third segment has the teachers getting a taste for human flesh. By that, I mean the teachers start eating students, because the school lunch tastes, pretty bad. Although the third segment isn't as memorable, it's still pretty funny. And I hope I'm not cramming this down your throat, but you should really watch this episode. It's really funny. I don't think you'll regret it. This is my favorite Treehouse of Horror, with one exception. Treehouse of Horror 6, released in 1995. This episode is just as good as Treehouse of Horror 5, except one segment sets it apart. But I'll get to that later. The first segment has all of the mascots coming to life after Homer takes a donut from Lard Lads. This is an episode that I personally find to be more special than the last one, And the last one might be genuinely better, and I feel like you might prefer that one more than me. But this one is just more, like, personally funny to me. The second segment is a Nightmare on Elm Street parody. Groundskeeper Willie as Freddy Krueger is genius. And this segment is so funny, man. It's so funny. How do they even come up with such funny moments as this?
Do not touch Willie. Good advice.
The third segment has Homer stumbling onto a new dimension. And this right here is my favorite segment of The Simpsons. It's so creative, and it's also funny, of course. Which, I know I've been saying it's funny for a lot of these ones. But this one is just so funny. And that's the most important thing to me when I'm watching an episode of The Simpsons. And the ending just gets me, man. It just has that vibe to it, you know? That weird sci-fi, early 80s cheesy horror vibe. This is also very technically impressive for 1995. I mean, the CG is somehow better than Treehouse of Horror 28. Although this episode might be my favorite, I feel like most people's favorite would be Treehouse of Horror 5. That's the one that I would recommend watching most of all. I mean, this is a great follow-up, but I feel like more people would just enjoy watching 5 as opposed to 6. I mean, it was a close call, but in the end, one must reign supreme. Not Treehouse of Horror, that one was crap.
Thank you for watching and see you next time. Hopefully.